Your heads with me, we'll begin with an invocation. Father God, thank you for a beautiful summer, for the time that we've had with family and friends, the memories we've made, the weather we've enjoyed. Pray, Father, that as it comes to a close, we are all rested and well prepared for the year that's ahead of us, and we're greeting it with excitement. We pray your blessing over it. In your name we pray. Amen. If you'll stand with me, we'll have the Pledge of Allegiance. All right, I will now call to order the special meeting of August 1st, 2023. And we will begin, since we don't have an audience this evening, I'm going to skip over our directions for the audience. And we'll begin with item number 1 to review the 2023-2024 proposed millage rolled back rate calculation and the 2023-2024 tentative budget for all funds. Dr. Legutko, the floor is yours.
Okay, can you hear me? Okay, good. All right, we are here to discuss the 23-24 adoption of the millage and, of course, the 23-24 tentative budget. So with that, we did go over this information a week ago. So basically, it's the same information. There is one slide that I did add to the lovely presentation. So it's a little longer, but we'll survive. Okay? All right, here we go. Okay. All right. As stated, today our meeting will be for you all. I'm asking the board to adopt the millage rate, approve the tentative budget, and set the final hearing for September 14, 2023. With that, we'll go into the budget process. As you know, it is a circle of continuous monitoring. As the slide shows, we started off with planning. That planning started in January with the FTE projections. And of course, after the FTE projections, we started doing the allocations. So everything starts with the FTE projections. It's our students, butts in the seats. How many students are we going to get in that fiscal year to help support the operation of our school system? So with that, we start with the planning. We do our projections, we start the preparation, and we are here at the point of adoption. Once it's adopted, then we start the reporting from the beginning, day 1, July 1, through the end through June 30th of that fiscal year. And then throughout that fiscal year, we are continuously monitoring that budget. Because as you will see in one of the slides that I did place in there, the additional slide, there are changes throughout the year, and it's based on enrollment. So we'll go over that later. Okay, you remember this beautiful slide where it talks about the budget process and the calendar? You can see January 23rd, that was the very first meeting we've had with the allocation planning, where we were planning how many teachers are we going to get, how many teachers will we need based on the FTE that we are projecting. The projection process, of course, there is oops, it went back. Oops, sorry. This is really sensitive. Yes, the projection process is not done just by myself. It is done with the collaboration of the chiefs or the cabinet members, as well as the Department of Education. They do have a hand in providing the data to us so that we can make an informed decision and provide as close as correct information regarding the number of students that we do have. Or that we do think we will receive. Okay? Okay, we did go over the historical millage. As we said, what's important with this slide is really to show you that you can see in 2004-2005, we went from 5.723 millage local to in 23-24, we're now down to 3.156. So it's been being decreased over the 20 years. However, you can see the values have gone up. So you can see how we've really not gotten back to that millage rate of the 5.7, but you did experience, or the citizens of Clay County have experienced increases in their tax roll. And we know why that is. Okay, this is the proposed millage levy for 23-24. Required local effort, 3.156 will generate $60,520,294. Basic discretionary, 0.748, $14.3 million. Well, 14,343,847. Capital outlay, your 1.5 mil, will generate 28,764,398. The additional voted millage, 1.000, will generate 19,176,265. Total 6.404 millage will generate a total of 122,804,804. This 6.404 to be levied exceeds the rollback rate by 12.10%. And I'll go into the rollback rate. Okay, this slide represents a comparison to last year. Last year's millage was 6.419. This year it is 6.404. It has decreased. However, the property values went from $16.5 billion to $19.1 billion. So you can see that property value has increased significantly. Now, had it stayed status quo with the rates that we have in the millage, and had we imposed those rates, the taxpayer would experience a $2.63 credit, meaning savings. So the reason I am advertising a tax increase is because of the property values increasing significantly. Okay. What is the rollback rate? That rollback rate is the millage rate for the new year, which would produce the same level of ad valorem tax revenue as was levied in the prior year. So basically, if I wanted to levy, if I wanted to collect the $106 billion, I would have to roll back the rate by the percentage that was indicated to generate those funds again. Okay? Okay, so now we're going to go into the meat of the presentation. As you know, in this past Thursday's news, Clay Today, there was an advertisement regarding this budget. So this is what you saw in the newspaper, where I did say notice of proposed tax increase. As you can see, we did say that we are proposing $122,804,804. That is the amount of revenue that we've got from a district perspective, a county perspective, that we've got to generate in order to participate in the FEFP. The FEFP, or state revenue, part of that FEFP includes the state revenue coming in. And in order to generate $270 million, our required local effort is $122,804,804 That's the first advertisement. The second one that was in the newspaper is the overall budget. This is the tentative budget. It includes all the funds that supports the school system. And the third one is the notice of school capital outlay. This represents the 1.5 mils. So by law, truth and millage, we are required to indicate how are we expected to spend that 1.5 mil. So based on that, this is a listing of all of the projects that could potentially be implemented for this fiscal year. That was a long list. And again, it was in the newspaper. What changed this year was we added the charter schools. That changed from last year to this year, where this year the charter schools are participating and will receive part of the 1.5 mils. And they are required to also indicate how are they going to spend those dollars. And based on the information, this is a general list of the items that can be spent. Doesn't mean that they are going to. They could choose one item, but this just represents what they could, so it's covered in the trim requirements. Okay. Okay, so those were the advertisement that showed up in this Thursday's newspaper. So now, once it's advertised, now I can present this and obtain the approval from the board. So let's get into it. All right, so if you can recall what I said, these are the items that the general fund supports. We're going to go into the general fund part of the budget first. As you can see, it supports everything, which go from curriculum all the way to our capital investments, our debt service, some of those items. No, correction, not our debt service. The debt service is covered by the LCIF, the 1.5 mils. They support our technology, our salaries. That's the biggest expense within the general fund. And this is a pictorial view from a pictorial view of how those funds are being spent. And you can see the majority of those dollars are being generated from the state dollars versus our local, which is the $78 million. Okay. I'm gonna go through this really quick because I believe, unless you all have questions, these numbers have not changed from the last meeting. Everything remained the same. And it is for a reason. I cannot change my tentative requests or this budget until September 14th. So all the changes that may happen between now and September 14th, that's when I will present to you, here is what happened from this date to this date, because we don't know. School's going to start, things could happen. I would need to probably modify some of this. So again, sorry. This is a summary of our revenues that we collect. As you can see, we collect our local revenue. The 71 million represents the property RLE, the property taxes that we do collect. Now you'll notice there's a difference in the amount because school districts must only budget 96% of those funds. We are not allowed to budget the entire amount. And for that reason, you'll see the difference in what is in this report versus what is actually being presented in the ad. So, okay. And let's see, the state revenue, the FEFP, we talked about the 234,344 plus the 37.1 makes up the the state portion of the revenue that comes in to support us. All right, I'm going to continue on. Again, this is a summary of our transfers that, and as you can see, we transfer it into the general fund to help out with the expenses. And it lists those types of expenses. Okay, this is the extra slide that I brought in. And what this slide represents is our FEFP, the second calculation. Now, I know you can't see it very well there, so you do have a hard copy in the back of the book. So in case you need to look at the numbers clearly. But the reason I gave you this presentation, this worksheet, this is what I use in order to determine what our revenue is every calculation. And I wanted to show you how it changes constantly. You can see with the red, I don't know if there's a pointer here. But you can see the red part of it there. That is the second calculation. When we started off with the budget coming from the state, from the governor, deciding how much are we going to receive for funding, we started off with the conference. You see where you can see the conference there, the conference report. That's right next to the red. But what we do is we compare what did we receive from the previous accounts. So you can see I've got second calc, I've got third calc, and I've got fourth calc. What we do is we actually compare what did we receive in the fourth calculation to what we plan on receiving in this fiscal year. And we do the difference. Of course, if there's an increase, the increase is based either on the increase is based on our FTE projections. So obviously, I did project additional students to show up in this fiscal year. So therefore, you can see we will earn extra funding. You can see total additional funding compared to the fourth calculation is about $31 million, right? Well, there's still one more calculation for me to receive. I will receive what we call the final calculation. The final calculation comes in early September. And what that tells me is that what did I really earn in the 22-23 school year? So then I would then have to make some adjustments based on what I actually received in the final calculation. It's sort of like a shore up. You know, the state looks at it, they do all their calculations, they look at all the add-ons, they look at McKay, they review everything for that fiscal year. And then they send us the final. They have adjustments, they have all sorts of things that could impact this budget. So that number, that $31 million, could change significantly. But what I also want you to know is that there were other things that impacted this budget. You can see there are a lot of spaces where we typically, not the first, second, third, fourth, fifth. The fifth section there is called categoricals. And we typically would receive dollars to support those activities specifically. And I have to spend the funds on that particular activity. So the first thing I want you to see is the funding compression. That's further up in the calculation. They took that away. I lost 1.6 million dollars. They didn't put that into the BSA. They just took it away. The scholarships, you can see on I wish this thing could point, but you can see on the very bottom, towards the bottom, where I said scholarships, last year it was 12 million, I believe. This year, they had set aside 15 million for us. However, they did in the part of the calculation, and again, this is very confusing for everyone, but I just wanted you to see this is what we go through in order to determine how much money did we really receive. So there's a lot of increases, decreases, removals, all sorts of things that we have to plan for. So even though I started off, it looks like I'm going to get $31 million. Seems like I'm going to be rich, right? Well, no, because not only did they take away some of the funds, they took away the categorical responsibility, not categorical line item, placed it in my BSA, which is my base student allocation, which typically it's free for me to just try to support what I need to support. But the requirements for those activities remain. So TSIA, which is the teacher incentive funds, You notice there's a 0 next to it. There's no number there. So it's not considered a categorical, but it is a categorical. And I have to take it away from my $31 million. I have to take away. And really, and it's more than what last year was, because I had to do a calculation to determine we have more teachers, we have more students, so we're going to have more teachers. So there was a calculation that was provided to me by the state to say, if you need to come up with a reasonable number, use this calculation to come up with that number. So that's where you see the $12 million, the $12.4 million. Under, the 12.3 million. Instructional materials. Now, you know we've got to buy those books no matter what. You know, whether it's an adoption or not, we have to spend those funds in that area. And the amount was 3.1. Well, they didn't have a calculation for that, so I had to use the prior year. So I'm assuming, never assume, but I am, that it's going to cost about the same. Well, of course, we've always contributed part of the general fund BSA to help support some of these activities. But, you know, so teacher classroom supplies. Oh my goodness, I did not, realize that we were going to have to do that. I knew we had to do it, but we didn't know that there was going to be a set amount that we needed to send out. And we had to send it out by August 1st. So that's where that number came from. We were trying to prepare and decide how many teachers that we do have that are returning, and try to provide those dollars to them. Hopefully I did do it for August 1st, but I'm sure there's going to be some teachers that we missed, so we will take care of those after the fact. And of course, reading. They removed it from the categorical category, but it's about 2.1 million, that's last year's numbers. So I had to remove it from the BSA of $31 million. What does that mean? That means that, I've got to account for it. I've got to spend it. So I'm going to be budgeting my own categorical, basically. And then, of course, some of the other increases. This is just a snippet of a few of the increases that we will experience. I tried to get the larger numbers, but there are other areas that we will experience increases. The retirement, that I can't control. The state sets that. So that was about 3. So bottom line is, I am getting out of the gate in a negative number, $7 million I'm short, starting off, and that's where, a lot of sleepless nights, and telling myself I really love this job and love doing budgeting, to see how can I present a balanced budget to you, the board, and to Mr. Superintendent, and still survive the whole year and maintain a reasonable fund balance. Okay, so I'm going to get off this slide because I love this slide. Anyway. All right, let's go into the expenditures. We talked about the expenditures. All of the funds go towards the schools, the centers, instruction. Everything is all about instruction for our teachers. How do we support our students in our schools? Okay. And again, we talked about the different categories, and I shared with you with the red book and our chart of accounts, so that any questions that you have regarding the functions or the object codes on how those dollars are being reported or spent, please, you can call me and ask, and I'll be happy to share that with you. Okay? Okay. So again, here is the summary by expenditure, a summary of expenditures by function code. As you can see, the $5,000, the majority of the dollars are spent in the instructional side. The first 5 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The first 6 area of this, the function codes are targeted specifically for the schools, for the instructional side. The rest of it is overhead, standard operating expenses for operating a business. You've got 7,600, which is your food service. That supports our students. We feed them their lunch, breakfast and lunch. So, all right, so again, I'm going to go through this really quick, so if you have any questions, please. Again, the summary, this pictorial view showing that really we are spending our dollars for instruction. We're targeting our students and our teachers so that they have the support to do their jobs. Okay, here is by object code. So again, you can see, and I explained what the 100 through the 700. However, you can see the 100 and 200 is salaries and benefits. That's what we are about, people, right? So 77% of our budget resides in salaries and benefits. So we don't really have a whole lot of extra dollars to really spend for fluff, you know. And I also want to make it clear that what you're looking at, was audited by our our auditors. Every year, this is done annually. The fourth year, it is audited by the Auditor General. So that would be in the 24-25 school year. The Auditor General will be here to audit our books. No, I'm sorry. This year, 23-24, the Auditor General will be auditing our books. The 22-23, it's our private auditors that we contract with. But you're looking at actual expenditures, so you can see the difference. The reason it's 82% and 81% is because right now I am budgeting for just salaries and benefits. I don't know about all the extra stuff that may occur during the year. We don't know about, any more multiple assignments, tutoring, those types of things. So then what happens is the money moves from one object code to another. Schools may have extra dollars sitting in their purchase services, and they want to do some extra tutoring. They'll move the dollars up, they'll transfer it, and that's when I bring you all the monthly financial reports and the budget transfers to show you, here's how these funds are being moved around with the same budget. Typically, it stays the same, 360 million, the very bottom total. But throughout the year, we receive additional revenue. The counts that I talked about, count 2, count 3, or count 4, those are modified to ensure that we're still within our budget based on the students that we believe we have, what we've reported to the state. So those are what those budget transfers are when I bring to you every month. Okay. This is just a pictorial view to show you that we're spending our money in salaries and benefits. Bottom line, the majority of our funds. Okay, so now, this is a summary of our, just an overall picture of our financial status. You can see we're bringing in about 28 million in fund balance. Our revenue that we're expecting is about 355 million. Add the fund balance to it, it becomes 384. Our expenditures is about 360 million. So, and you can see the fund balance, I'm projecting to have a 4.71 fund balance. 30 million, the total is 30 million, 16.7 will be unreserved. The rest is categorized or assigned for activities. Okay, I'm gonna go. Here we are with the fund balance slide that you can see over the last several years. We've tried to climb up and have a reasonable fund balance. So for any unexpected incidences that may happen. You know, it's our savings account. Okay, so now part of the general fund in the ad now, not in this, on the in the summaries, is the 1 mil. That is part of general fund. So the ad includes the 1 mil under general, okay? But I wanted to break it out so you all can see exactly how we're spending the 1 mil. Yeah, I treat it as a categorical. I put it, it's monitored and reported separately in my monthly financials and in our system as well. So you can see we're spending about, it's going to be budgeted about 21 million, and this is how we're going to spend those funds. There's, you know, the amount that's in instruction, the 5,000, it increased because of, I believe we've got some expenditures in there for bonuses. So remember, this year, we gave, one of the compensation that we gave was an additional bonus to all staff. And that was paid, well, wait, I'm sorry, that's wrong, that's wrong. I'm thinking of the federal funds, the ESSER funds. The 5,000, oh goodness, I'm trying to remember what that is now. The charters, I'm sorry, the charters. So the charters do receive some of the funds. The facilities, 7,400, 12 million, that is targeted for hardening of our schools. That was part of the resolution, that we would not only pay for the police or the safety and security via police and guardians, but we would also try to harden our schools. So the majority of those funds are spent in investing in our schools and protecting, doing the protection of the buildings. Let's see, the transportation, that is a bus radio system that we are paying the final payment, I believe. Let's see, operations, the 5.2, that's where you'll see the police and the guardian. That is their salaries and benefits under that function. Maintenance, we've got a couple of positions that are paid out of that, which is the locksmiths. And I believe that's one of the positions that's being supported in there. Okay. And this is a breakdown by object code. So you can see the salaries and benefits, the 2.8 and the 3.3, that represents the police and the guardians. Purchase services are the the contracts with Orange Park and Green Cove, the support there, and other types of contracts that they may have. Okay, and of course, capital outlay, you can see the larger amount there is for construction, those types of hardening of schools. Okay, I'm going to continue. And this is a summary of that, of our financial condition there. So we'll have we're having about $5 million in fund balance remaining at the end of the year. Okay, I'm going to move on. This is just a summary of how those funds are going to be spent. So you have a breakdown. What's going to the school police, their salaries and benefits, their operational expenditures, the guardian operational expenditures, the facilities, transportation, the charter schools, and of course, as you recall in the resolution, the $2 million transfer to help pay for the health benefits. Okay. All right, now we're getting out of general fund and we'll go into debt service. Debt service, of course, is exactly what it is. It is our liability for billing our schools. It's our bonds that we do have. We have the special racetrack bonds. We have the COPs, Certificate of Participation. We do have a bus lease. And so our annual total is about $7 million that we do pay towards these bonds. Oops, I went too fast. This is a breakdown of the different bonds that we do have and the payments. We've got the 2017 to 2012. We've got a 2010 racetrack bond, and 2014. Is that 14? I need glasses. And of course, the bus lease. So, and it tells you what we started off with, what is the remaining principal, and what the principal payment would be for this year, and the interest payment. Okay. This is a summary of, again, each one of these slides, depending on the fund, has a summary to show exactly how much fund revenue we're bringing in, what our expenditures are, and what will remain. So we'll end up about with 92,000 in fund balance for our debt service fund. Okay. Here's another look at what's remaining, the schedule of what's left to be paid for the different types of COPs that we do have. Oops. Okay, we're going to get into the capital funds. Again, revenue is about 82 million. That includes, that is supported by the LCIF, the 1.5, and sales tax, impact fees. And keep in mind, a lot of this is just projections. It changes throughout the year. So, and for me, if you know me, I'm a very conservative person. So I try to budget based on what I believe we would, so some of the numbers, even though we collected a little more, it may be a little less. I do know I have to change the interest, but I can't change anything now. I have to change in September. So you'll see that as a change. When I do bring it to you, I'll say, it was $13.75, so I will increase that. I don't know if we'll receive that much money, only because from the prior year, because of the collections. I don't know if it's going to go up, go down, so it'll be reasonable. Okay, I'm going to move on. This is how we're going to spend those funds, LCIF. All the funds, I'm sorry, that is under capital. Library books, the majority of it is under remodeling and renovations and improvements other than building. Because the sales tax, of course, is to support capital. So that's why there's a large number there. Okay. All right. And again, a summary of our revenues, expenditures, and what we expect to end up with fund balance. And it just breaks down the summary of our transfers between funds. Okay. All right. Again, this chart represents our charter schools and the revenue that they will be receiving. Again, this is all projected based on their enrollment. So as you can see, I projected FTE and their FEFP, which is the general fund portion, the 1 mil. They are entitled to 1 mil funds this year. Capital, the LCIF, sales tax. So they will receive a total of about 19.1 million from all of the funds. We also support PACE and AMI, which is those are the DJJ sites that we do have, and we are contracted with them. They're not our schools, but they are a contract that provides services to us. Okay, oops. Okay, we'll get into the special revenue, which is the federal funds. Part of the federal funds include food service, 410, and the other special revenues like the contracted programs, Title I, Title II, Title III, IDEA, those types of funds. Those funds are supplemental to our programs. And then, of course, we were blessed to have the CARES funding, CRISA funding, and ARP funding. So, so those are the other four special revenues that we received over the last couple of years. Okay, so we'll get into food service. It's specifically for food service, and you can see the revenues that Susie Glover, who is the director, she manages that program, and of course, you can see the different types of revenues that's brought in. The majority of it comes in from our federal government, and of course, you can see we've transitioned back to the standard revenue that we receive. During COVID, a lot of the funds came in through the summer food program. And that has changed now. So you can see the difference in the dollars received. Summer food program in 21-22, we received $22 million in that category. Last year, we received $62,000. So they transitioned it back to the standard operating procedure. We're back to normal. So, okay. This is how we're spending our dollars. The majority of it is going into food and supplies, and of course, salaries and benefits. Summary of what it looks like, how much we're bringing in, what our fund balance is, and how much are we going to spend, projected to spend. So we're going to end up at about a 3.95 fund balance, which is very, very good. Typically, she has to maintain about a 3-month expenditures. And of course, that is more than 3 months of expenses. We'll get into Fund 420, which is the special revenue. As I indicated, it's the Title I, IDEA, Title II, Title III, all of those different programs that we do have that comes in. It's through an application process, and these are the expected funds for those programs, the revenues that we are expecting. Now, this may change, and of course, we may have others. It just depends, what is sent to us and whether or not we apply for those funds. Typically, we would apply for any additional funds to help support our programs. This is how those funds are spread. As you can see, it's primarily in instruction. Okay, and this is the further breakdown by object code. The majority of those dollars are in salaries and benefits, supplemental to our programs. And summary, the total revenue, $15.8 million. We expect to spend $15.8 because federal funds do not allow us to maintain a fund balance or keep any dollars. Basically, we spend the funds, and then we request the funds down from the state. So it's more of a reimbursement program. Okay, special revenue for 4X, and the first special revenue was 420. This is, and these numbers were given by the state for us to monitor the different revenue sources that we would receive under COVID. So, CARES, not COVID. Here is the actual listing of all of the revenues that we received over the last couple of years. Each one had its own representation, had its own, some of them were considered categorical, and they had to be spent in that manner. Okay, all right. Here's how we actually broke those funds out, and it was an application process. It had to be submitted to the state, reviewed by the state, to ensure that the expenditures that we placed in those particular grants were reasonable and followed the direction of the federal government. So, okay. Salaries and benefits, we did spend in salaries and benefits because that was the bonuses that we provided to our employees.
Purchase services, capital outlay, there were grants specifically for HVAC and cleaning air and those types of things. So there's a high amount there as well. Okay, summary, same thing. We're not allowed to maintain a fund balance. It's a reimbursement process. So therefore, funds received, funds go out. And then we request the reimbursement. Okay, internal service fund. This is our liability. Internal service funds are the fund, inter fund, I should say. It is part of our general fund. So that's why it's called internal service fund. So, and those funds are used to maintain accounting for our liability and, of course, this past year, our medical insurance. So with that, I'll go into our liability insurance, which is we have a fund number, which is 711. And it houses our liability insurance went too fast. These are the coverage that we have: property, automobile, workers' comp, cyber risk, student accident, storage, boiler and machinery, errors and omission. These are the standard coverage that is needed in order to operate our business. So here it's revenues, and I'm trying to explain what happens with this fund is, when you have your salaries, right? Then there's benefits attached to it. You've got your FICA, Medicare, insurance, medical insurance. Well, there's also something called workers' comp. So the workers' comp is deducted from that salary payment and is transferred over to this fund to cover the expenditures that we will incur for any kind of liability or workers' comp expenditures. Okay? I hope that kind of explained what that fund is. So you can see employee benefits, purchase services. The purchase services is more the premium to Arthur Gallagher, who is our vendor for providing coverage to us. Okay. And then charges for services is just a little breakdown of what they are. So you will, you can see it's for the premiums and the charges for workers' comp and any kind of liability cases that we may incur. Okay, then this one is the health insurance. This is 712, and this year we went self-insured. So it's not totally, our self-insured program starts October to September, October to October. So we're not really through this past year. We're still part of managing that program to see whether or not where we are, and we started. This year started October. So we still have a little more reporting to do on this fund. But basically this is where we are right now. So again, a lot of it is housed under the Board of Education because it supports the entire district. Okay, oops, sorry. This is how it was spent. Those funds are being spent. The majority of it is the $32 million because that pays for premiums, the claims, everything that goes through that account. So the salaries and benefits is for our wellness program, for the coordinator that supports that program. And then this is a summary of revenues coming in and appropriations going out. What do we plan on expending? And of course, we do have to maintain a fund balance so that the actuary can show the actuary that we can support claims if anything happens. So I do have to maintain a fund balance in that account. So we're building that up now. Okay, wow, that was the end. That's awesome. All right, so we're here to the next step where we are going to adopt the millage rate and approve the tentative budget for 23-24. We are going to set the final public hearing for September 14, 2023, to adopt the final millage and the budget for 23-24. Do I have any questions? All right, it's all yours.
Thank you, Dr. Legetko. All right, at this time, I will open the public hearing for comments on the 2023-2024 budget and millages. Seeing none, I will close the public hearing and bring it back to the board. And we will begin with the agenda item number 3 to adopt the 2023-2024 required local effort millage levy. Do I have a motion?
I move that the Clay County School Board adopt the 2023-2024 final proposed required local effort mill levy of 3.156 with a proposed amount to be raised of $60,520,294. The RLE millage includes basic RLE of 3.151 and a prior period adjustment millage of .005.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
I have a motion from Ms. Bola, a second from Ms. Clark. All in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Ms. Skipper, did you vote?
I'm sorry, I'm voting, I'm voting now.
Okay.
Oh, you want me to come on and verbally say it? I'm sorry.
If you don't mind, yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Okay,
So
sorry.
we'll try that again. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries 5-0. All right. Item number 4, to adopt the 2023-2024 basic discretionary operating millage levy. Do I have a motion?
I make a motion that the Clay County School Board adopt the 2023-2024 final proposed base discretionary millage of .748 with a proposed amount to be raised of $14,343,847.
A motion from Ms. Clark. Do I have a second?
A second.
Second from Ms. Hanson. All in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say no. Motion carries 5-0. Item number 5, to adopt the 2023-2024 Local Capital Improvement Fund millage levy. Do I have a motion?
I move that the Clay County School Board adopt the 2023-2024 final proposed capital outlay millage of 1.500 with a proposed amount to be raised of $28,764,398.
I second the motion.
I have a motion from Ms. Hanson, a second from Ms. Bola. All in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say no. Motion carries 5-0. Item number 6, approve the advertisement for the 2023-2024 tentative budget and millages. Do I have a motion?
I move that the Clay County School Board adopt the 2023-2024 final proposed voted millage of 1.00 with a proposed amount to be raised of $19,176,265.
Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Motion from Ms. Bola, a second from Ms. Clark. All in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say no. Motion carries 5-0. Item number 7, to adopt the 2023-2024 total millage levy. Do I have a motion?
I move that the Clay County School Board adopt the 2023-2024 final proposed total millage will equal 6.404 with a total amount to be raised of $122,804,804. The total millage rate to be levied is more than the rollback rate by 12.10%.
I have a motion from Ms. Clark. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Second from Ms. Hanson. All in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say no. Motion carries 5-0. Item number 8 is to adopt the 2023-2024 tentative budget for all funds and set the public hearing for the 2023-2024 final budget for Thursday, September 14th, 2023 at 5:05 PM. Do I have a motion?
I move that the Clay County School Board adopt the tentative budget for the 2023-2024 school year as follows. General operating in the amount of $419,281,591. Special revenue budget in the amount of $64,053,342. Debt service budget in the amount of $7,119,154. Capital outlay budget in the amount of $99,394,563 for a total final budget of $589,848,650.
I second it.
Just a quick question for point of order. Do we need, in her motion, to state the date and time for the meeting? Okay. Can you amend your motion to state that we will set the public hearing for the 2023-2024 final budget Thursday, September 14th, 2023 at 5:05 PM? Yeah, you don't have to restate it. You can just say,
Yes.
you
I-
agree
yeah,
to
I
amend your
approve.
motion.
And I agree to the second.
All right. All in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say no. Motion carries 5-0. All right. Item number 9 is the Resolution 24-01 determining the 2023-2024 tentative millages. Do I have a motion?
I move to approve Resolution 24-01 determining the 2023-2024 tentative revenues and millages levied for the fiscal year 2023-2024.
I have a motion from Ms. Bolda. Do I have a second? Second from Ms. Clark. All in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say no. Motion carries 5-0. Item number 10, the Resolution 24-02, adopting the 2023-2024 tentative budget. Do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion.
I have a motion from Ms. Clark. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Second from Ms. Hanson. All in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say no. Motion carries 5-0. And item number 11 is to approve the tentative 2023-2024 through 2027-2028 educational facilities plan. Ms. Ellis, the floor is yours.
Right. It's about to get really exciting. Good evening, Board and Superintendent Broski. What I've handed to you is a copy of our EFP. It's our 5-year plan that we do every year. We update it annually. Things change, we'll get into that. But I do want to thank all of our operations department. We get together as a team and we all speak about what we want to include in here, what needs to be included in here. We take into account maintenance, transportation. We have to purchase the buses with capital money. Our planning department, everything is based on growth. And our facility construction department, the police department does their FSATs. They go to all the schools and let us know kind of where we have hardening weaknesses. We take those projects into account as well. Food services as well, they let us know any kitchen upgrades or freezer coolers that are down that need to be replaced. Those are usually done over a break, like a summer. Also, we won't, I know this is a big document. We're not going to go over the whole thing tonight. We'll just kind of hit the highlights with the growth and also facility projects. So without further ado, I'll let Lance Addison speak to growth. He's our planner.
Thank you, Ms. Ellis. Mr. Superintendent, Madam Chair, board members, welcome to your annual Planning and Growth presentation. So I'm a numbers guy, and I like Dr. Legutko's presentation because I like numbers. However, now you get numbers and maps, so this is some really good stuff, okay? Numbers and maps, all right? You cannot beat it, all right? All right, Dr. Legutko, how are we doing here? There we go. Okay, so what are we going to be going over tonight? I'm sorry, I move around a lot. It's that teacher in me. You know, you got to keep them alert and you got to keep them interested, right? So forgive me if you see me moving around and out of the microphone. So we're going over growth, enrollment, and student data trends, areas of growth in the county, and projected school needs. And stop me if you have any questions. I'll be happy to answer anything that you have, okay? And if I'm going too fast. So this is how we're looking right now. We have 43 schools and 2 charter schools, and we're projected to grow to 45 district-managed schools within the next 10 to 20 years, and we're projected to build classroom additions at 4 sites. Our membership or our enrollment, our total enrollment was over 43,000 as of May. We're projected to enroll greater than 11,800 students in the next 10 to 20 years, and projected 25,000 new homes over the next 10 to 20 years. And I will get into the numbers and the statistics of what that generates. Our projects are approximately $200 million to build new student stations to keep up with that growth. I want to go over the census data. The census data as of April 1, 2020, as you can see, we were at 218,000 residents in the county, and that was a 14.3% change from 2010 to 2020. These are the population estimates. Unfortunately, they are a little over a year behind, and that's from Bieber. They do the population estimates. As of April 1, 2022, our estimates were at 225,000. We do not have the current data of where we're exactly at as far as the population in the county right now. I assume that next year when Bieber puts those numbers out, we'll still be a year behind. But that's where they estimated us to be at as of April 1st of 2022. To put that in perspective, that's 3.3% population increase over a 2-year period. I wanted to show you also what the projections are, the Bieber projections. So as in all projections, you have a low, medium, and high projection. The high projection as of 2050, I wanted to point that out, is 351,000 residents. That's a high projection, but even if we look at the medium projection, that's 284,000 residents. So somewhere in that area, we can look at, if we're at 225 and going up to 284, possibly 351, that's substantial growth in the county over the next 27 years. Substantial. This is our historical 4-year growth summary. This is a great slide. It really lets us take a look at what's been going on over the past 4 years. We've had a 9.8% increase in student membership enrollment. That equates to over 3,400 students with an average annual growth rate of 3.4%. I want to point out that the COVID year is included in those calculations that I calculated because we had a negative growth rate in the COVID year as far as student population goes. To put that in perspective, also, population growth was 14.3% over a 10-year period. So if you look at our annual average growth rate of 3.4 as opposed to the 14.3% over a 10-year, we're actually, as far as student growth rate, we're actually over what the population census was. So what does that mean? We're growing rapidly. Okay, COFTI. I'm going to try to explain COFTI to you because a lot of people get COFTI kind of confused. COFTI is it's capital outlay full-time enrollment. This is from the Education Estimating Conference that Florida DOE performs on an annual basis. And then they send out this information to myself, Dr. Legutko, and we get these numbers. What does COFTI mean? So Dr. Legutko had a phrase for it. My phrase is derrieres and chairs. That's what it is. COFTI is when we have derrieres in chairs. They come in and they sit down in that seat. Does that mean it's one all day long? Not necessarily. A student may come in, sit down in a seat for 2 periods. If it's a 6-period school, then we get counted for 2/6 of that student if they don't come back. So that's how COFTI is calculated. However, this is an estimating conference where they give us forecast. I am required by statute to use these forecasts. The forecasts have a methodology of a cohort survival rate. Cohort survival rate uses historical data. That's a great way to do it. However, what they don't take into consideration is my growth. They don't see what you see on Sandridge. They don't see what we see all the time, or that we have Governor's Park DRI coming in 7, 8, or 9 years. They don't see that. Those are the things that I see. So what does the statute say? They say you need to take these numbers and then you need to factor in your growth and then come up with a projection based on that. Any questions on that? So this is the COFTI. I just wanted to put it in a chart for you over the 10-year period without growth, without my input put in. As you can see, they have us growing at a 3.8% increase, which final in 10 years was a COFTI of 37,669 as opposed to a forecast this year of 36,271. That's not very much. It's in the grand scheme of things, what are we looking at? 1,400 students, something like that in a 10-year period, and we've increased 3,400 in membership over the past 4 years. So this is where the discrepancies come when the COFTI and the Education Estimating Conference come up with their numbers. That's why I have to come in and I have to recalculate this with all of our growth and use our student generation rates to try to determine what our next forecast will be. So this is my calculation, and this calculation changes yearly. As you know, they use historical data, so every year their calculations are going to be different. Their forecasts change year to year. So last year we had a calculation of a 24.6% increase, as opposed to this year when I did the calculations, we had a 15.1% increase over the 10-year period. Now, what's the big discrepancy? Well, if you can recall, then when we came out of COVID, we had a spike in enrollment. So they took that historical data and put it into the next year. So they projected that we have another spike like that using the methodology that you use. However, since we're not in that spike anymore, we're at a steady growth rate. Now that number is going to come down a little bit, and it'll change again next year. So what we do, now wasn't supposed to happen. So what I do is I take the cohort survival method that they use, and I go through every single development, every area of growth in the entire county, every home that I have on the books that is supposed to be built or is projected to be built, and I use those homes with a student generation rate per school, per zone, and I go through every single one of those, and I determine what I think each, based on, now I do use historical data as how fast I believe they're going to build. So I take that data and I project how many homes will be built over a certain time period. And with that information, I come up with the calculations that I came up right here. As you can see, it's a little bit different. They had 37, I'm coming up with 43,000 COFTI. Now, there's another calculation that doesn't use COFTI and education estimating conference numbers. They use migration rates, they use birth rates, which COFTI does use, and they use full-time enrollment and also student membership and also students, the total amount of students that we have in the county. That forecast came out to about 49,000. So once again, we have a high, a medium, and a low forecast. The medium that I came up with is about 43,000 over the next 10 years. So I put this chart, it's kind of hard to read. I gave you all a copy of this chart so that you can go through and read it. What you can do is you can go through, you can see that we're going to take the COFTI projections and my projections, and we're going to apply those numbers, the overall numbers. The COFTI goes by county, and then they also go by grade. I take all of those numbers and I split them up into by school and by grade, for example, for elementary, for all three levels, elementary, junior high, and high school. Those are projections over the next 10 years that we come up with. The red means we're going to go over our level of service. The yellow means that we are over 100%, but we're not over our level of service for the projection for that school.
And the level of service is 110%?
110%, yes, ma'am. So our level of service is 110%. What that means is our schools can go up to 110% of capacity before we are considered out of statute. There are some that are above the 110%. Some of those we will need to take into account that we did do some rezoning this year. A lot of this does not take into account exactly what the numbers are when we start the school year this year. As for example, Lake Asbury Elementary, their numbers will reduce because some of those students were put into Spring Park Elementary, and then those numbers will level out eventually, and then I will come back in when I get new numbers and I'll recalculate these figures. This is the next 5 years. The first one was the beginning 5 years. This is the next 5 years. Also take into account that Middleburg High School, we are adding student stations by adding cafeteria space. So that number will also come down when we get that cafeteria space and the core capacity, and we'll be able to take those numbers and recalculate based on the core capacity of that school. So they won't be over the level of service is what I'm getting at. So our overall summary for growth in the district. This is the projected long-term 10 to 20-year growth summary. The Lake Asbury area, more than 7,000 homes. Oakleaf Middleburg, more than 4,000. Saratoga Springs, when it comes online. We don't know exactly when it's going to come online. However, we're anticipating somewhere around 25 that it will come online. As they start building, it's greater than 5,000 homes that'll come into that area. Governor's Park, once again, that property was sold. We don't know exactly what's going on with it right now. However, the predictions are that they want to start building. They want to get started, obviously. And we're looking at probably 27 through 29 for those homes to come online. So we're looking at all those homes coming online within the next 7 years, and we will have to accommodate those homes with student stations as the new growth comes into the district. Those are 25,000 homes just in those areas right there. Those are what we do know about. As more developers come in and they find property to build on, I assume that they will probably begin building, and that number may go up. As of right now, using the student generation rates, the projected students with the 25,000 homes over the 10 to 20-year growth summary is about 11,800 students. If we put that in perspective of how many schools we need and how many student stations we'll need eventually, that's we have to know where we're going to be able to plan for the educational facilities plan. And that's the whole purpose of this presentation is if we don't know what's going on in the county, and part of my title is intergovernmental relations, that's where I go and I collaborate with the county and find out exactly what's going on, if we can support, and then come up with calculations so that we know exactly what's going on, so that we can put together a feasible financial plan or educational facilities plan based on the growth in the county. Let's look at the different areas. These are my famous monopoly houses. I put those together. The bigger the house, the larger the development. It tells you how many homes are supposed to be in that development. If you look at the numbers, May 2023, Lake Asbury Elementary was about 104%. Shadow Lawn, Lake Asbury Junior, and Clay High were in the 80s. And Lake Asbury Junior, it's a little bit lower, and I think I've already briefed this last time, was because we moved some students from Lake Asbury Junior to Lakeside to be able to accommodate the growth in the area. However, the growth in the area is about 7,000 potential homes. And if you look, that's 1,790 elementary students, 570 junior high, and 1,100 high school. That does not include Saratoga Springs. That's just Sandridge and Russell Road and Henley. That's that triangle right there. Saratoga Springs, I'll put that into a different area. Okay, so AI is part of our world now, so I'm gonna use it to my advantage. I like this. This is our active construction AI that I'm using now. It really helps me out a lot. If you see the pink shows, it just shows reality. It shows everything, all the homes that are being built in the area. There's no commercial in Lake Asbury. So those are all homes other than the expressway that's going through there. So if there's pink on the expressway, that's where they're building. So that is the reality of how many homes will be coming into that area off of Russell, Sandridge, and over on Henley Road. The overall outlook, we kind of went over this. It's 3,460 students over the long-range plan. Oakleaf. Oakleaf has a little bit of growth. They have a potential for a little bit over 1,950 homes. You can see where the building and where the development is taking place. There's a couple of places over there. Those are the school numbers and the capacity where they were at as of May of 2023. We'll have to look at the numbers as this year opens up. And when the 10-day counts come out, I'll recalculate all of those numbers and see where we're at. I think some of them were projected to go down a little bit, depending on grade ups and things like that. So we'll have to look at those numbers again. But there is a little bit of growth in Oakleaf. About 60 to 65% of all of my permits they are for the Lake Asbury area. And then Middleburg and Oakleaf come in at about 20% each. So that's how the growth looks in the county and the district. This is the AI for the Oakleaf. That little bit over there on the left by the expressway, that's a little bit of commercial right there. However, the rest of it is all homes. Those are all about 3 or 4 different developments. These developments have been on the books for a long time. Cheswick Oaks, all of those developments down there. So they've been on the books for a while. So we've known about them for quite a while. Oakleaf overall outlook, based on the number of homes that we have on the books right now, about 750 students over the 3 levels. Middleburg. As you can see, Middleburg High School, the capacity is a little bit over right now because of the dining. However, whenever we take care of that dining facility over there, that will reduce down to a manageable number, even though it's manageable right now. We're looking at about a potential of about 2,000 homes in the area. A lot of it is on Blanding Boulevard and right over there, a little bit kind of south of Tynes. And then we can see what's going on, actual reality of it. That's the reality. So some of that are apartment complexes, and some of it over on the northeast side, that's a little bit of commercial right there. Then you see where the expressway is being built. So that's the reality of where everything is being built in the Middleburg area. These are great pictures. I love the reality to see exactly where we're at this point in time. And as you know, Google Earth, they sometimes can be 2 years behind. This is the most recent data that we can actually come by other than flying our own drones and airplanes over the county and taking pictures. Our overall outlook in Middleburg is about 900 students, about 470 elementary, 140 junior high, and 290 high school students. Green Cove. So we have Spring Park that just opened up. We're excited for Spring Park to come online. I'm projecting right at about 70%, 76% opening. That's a great number. And why is that a great number? Because we have Saratoga Springs coming online in about a year or two. So I really like that number and that's where we all talked about earlier in the year, where we would try to open right at about that number so that we have a little bit of space for growth in the area. Charles E. Bennett and all of those, as Governor's Park and the Rookery and all those south of 16 come online, those schools will fill up also. However, look at the number of homes that will come into that area in the long term. That's the largest number of homes that we will have in that area out of any area of in all of the county. So we will have to plan accordingly based on student stations and where we need to put student stations, and strategically plan how we're going to deal with that number of homes in that area. No AI, because there's nothing being built right now in the Green Cove area. Those are all the DRIs that are on the books and the development orders that are on the books. However, we can plan for it because we do know that we have those DRIs on the books. We're looking at about almost 7,000 students in that area. Future school sites. So just to give you a reference of maps of where everything is at, as you can see, Saratoga Springs is kind of just south of the Lake Asbury area, right off of Russell Road, and Governor's Park is south of 16, very large area. I believe it's about 3,000 acres down there. I don't know the exact acreage of Saratoga Springs. We do have property in both of those. The property has not been conveyed yet based on the agreements and the prop share agreements that we agreed to. As soon as they plat, then they will have to convey property to us. And then we can once again strategically plan how we're going to build schools in that area to accommodate the growth in the 10 to 20 year plan. So this is what we're looking at in the Saratoga Springs. Now, this is subject to change, okay? This is planned. So this is how we're looking right now. We're looking at a high school, RRR, in the Saratoga Springs area. However, that's not in our EFP 5-year plan. However, according to statute, I have to plan for 5 years, 10 years, and 20 years out. So that's why I show these numbers on here, and it's good to know. It's good to know where we have property and what the long-term plans are. That C Elementary, we don't have that property. That's kind of talking with Reinhold of where would be a good strategic location of where we might be able to acquire property later on down the line. So that's kind of where we are looking at, but that is not set in stone. We can always move around or try to choose different locations if necessary. Governor's Park. Now, once again, they have not conveyed the property, but we are supposed to get 3 sites in Governor's Park. The plan for those 3 sites is a high school and 2 K-8s eventually. Now, we understand that schools are expensive, so once again, strategic planning to be able to accommodate the students as they start coming to those areas. Once again, also not on the 5-year EFP, but I have to plan for the 5, 10, and 20-year plans per statute. And our projected immediate needs. So where are we looking at right now? To be able to accommodate the growth in some of our hot spots, we've have tentative plans, and we've discussed through planning, through Ms. Ellis and Dr. Kemp. We're looking at possibly an classroom addition to Oakleaf, a classroom addition to Lake Asbury Junior, to Rideout Elementary. As you can see, there's growth in those areas. Do some of the areas warrant a full school? Not necessarily, but we can accommodate the student growth by adding classroom additions. And then later on down the road, high school in Saratoga Springs, and a K-8 in the Governor's Park area. Those are projected costs based on what we see as construction costs as of right now. I would assume that as time goes on, those costs will possibly go up. If we're looking at 9, 10 years down the road, I would assume that those costs will probably go up eventually. And that is my presentation. I would be happy to take any questions.
Could I ask a
Ms.
question?
Bullock, go ahead, yep.
Thank you. I'm assuming you didn't include Keystone Heights Elementary's cafeteria, and I'm looking at the numbers there, and we're into that 101, 102%. But that did not accommodate the new cafeteria, Keystone Heights. Is that
So in
correct?
Keystone Heights, what we did is we did a kind of a 1-for-1 swap. I believe that we will have a little bit more capacity as that opens up, and then we will see how it levels out. But as we put classroom space in, we remove portables for that portable reduction at Keystone Heights.
Great, okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
Thank you.
Okay, and just as a reminder, these are just projections and plans. These things change mid-year, next year, it might be different. So just as a note about that. I also wanted to point out technology. We also collaborated with them. We support them as well. We have $3.7 million going to them this year, and their plan is also in this EFP. It has not been in there in previous years. That's on page 24, just if you guys want to look at that later. So Lance's, the planning part is basically the first half of this whole document. The second part is capital planning and facilities. And I will introduce Dr. Kemp to go over those fund sources and projects.
Good evening, Mr. Superintendent, board members. I get to be the closer. If that growth presentation didn't stress you out like it stresses me out, I think it's appropriate. 2 comments. Number 1, I think it's appropriate that they've entitled the projection strategy, the cohort survival method. It is a survival method for us to deal with the growth. And sometimes I just wish you could go back like 10, 15, 20 years and, help me understand. None of the information that he's provided tonight on the growth slides should be a surprise. It's every year for 20 years we've said it's coming. It's like the boy crying wolf, but it's coming, but it's here. So the leadership challenge we have now is that it's actually upon us, and we have to move forward with it. There you go. All right, so I'm here to talk about the educational facilities plan. Dr. Legutko did a great job reviewing the sources. We work with her team, the ops team, the facilities plan construction team works directly with Dr. Legutko and her team to create revenue sources and to develop what we are going to do conservatively for the year. We're kind of being forced to do that. We're kind of being forced to look at all of our projects and the cost of construction, supply and demand, material, and what we're having to do to make sure that we stay within a conservative projection. So real quickly, just when you take a look at the revenue sources in general, she went over those a little more in detail than I will right now, but I just want to make sure people understand that, if it's the 1.5 mil, that's the trim ad that she talks about. If that LCIF, the local capital improvement, if the projects aren't in that advertisement, local capital improvement fund cannot be used for that without coming back, re-advertising, coming to you as a board to make an amendment to that. So we do everything we can to make sure that the local capital improvement fund projects that are advertised are representing things that not only we're doing right now, but things we know we're going to have to do. So if it's available in the ad, we'll be able to execute those projects. Educational impact fees. The impact fees are for new growth only. We're coming off of 2 really big projects in which we built Spring Park Elementary School. And I was reviewing, and Ms. Bolo, last year this time, you had asked a question regarding the cost of Discovery Oaks just 3.5 short years ago and the cost of Spring Park Elementary School. And when you think that Ms. Ellis built Discovery Oaks 3.5 years ago for $27 million, you asked me this question last year. You said, what is Spring Park projected to be? And I said it would be approximately $40 million, but that's exactly where it's ending up, right at $40 million with furniture, fixture, and equipment. So when you see that challenge in the cost of construction, supply and demand, it forces us to be really conservative with the projects that we're putting on our EFP. So the educational impact fees can be used for new growth only. Remember in the last workshop, I said you got that dollar sign, and there's a string that goes through the dollar for a reason. That string, there's strings attached to a lot of the money, the revenue sources that we get. Sometimes the public doesn't understand. They think it's a big pot, we can use it for what we want. Doesn't work that way. Impact fees can only be used for documented new growth. Can't use it to replace existing space. Can't use it for portable elimination and reduction. We can't use it for that. We can only use it for new growth. And the impact fee collections, they vary, so we conservatively project. Capital outlay and debt service, in order to use CO and DS funds, it has to be on the project priority list. Gas tax, for example, is restricted to just right-of-way projects only. That's sidewalks, anything that's adjacent to the school property in which the board owns and we're making improvements to that property, gas tax can only be used for that. Of course, we have the Ed First Half Cent sales tax. That's restricted by referendum. That's the 4 buckets of the referendum, which the Oversight Committee validates for us, that we can only use that. We cannot use that for salaries. It can only be used for construction, renovation, repair, technology infrastructure, and safety security projects. So that fluctuates based on tax collections throughout the year. The 1 mil, safety and security, the safety and security mil, that is also protected by referendum. That is used for the things that Dr. Legutko said. It takes care of our safety security projects, hardening, all those issues. Proportionate fair share mitigation. That's if you lack of a better term, it's kind of like impact fees up front. It never covers the cost of, the mitigation never covers the cost of the construction and facilities project upgrades we have to do. It certainly offsets, but it never covers the cost. So I just want to make sure that you understand that those revenue streams have to be conservatively projected. And we would rather project less projects in the EFP for this year, knowing that prices are volatile. We'd rather do that than have too many projects in and we cancel and cut the projects. I'd rather bring a project in from an out year than have too many projects in there and we can't get there we can't get to it. So take a look at the revenue streams real quick from the capital perspective. Now we scrimmage, we call it the power of the scrimmage. We scrimmage with Dr. Legutko and her team and we get numbers. These numbers will change. These are projections. Our numbers will be completely in sync for the final when she gets to validate the final FTE and counts. So local capital improvement, about $26.2 million. Capital outlay and debt service, I explained that's 1.3 mil. Money we conservatively project. We projecting projects. When we're conservatively projecting these projects, when I say we're looking at $9 million, you might see on Dr. Legutko's slide $12 million. When we say $9 million, those are projects that we're planning in the EFP. We want to be conservative because some projects that we project now may come in over, some may come in under, and we want to make sure that we can execute this year's projects. Gas tax, improvements to property, and that next to what we own, the sidewalk, 46.5. Impact fees, again, conservative projection of about $8 million. It varies in collections. It can go as high as 9, 10. It can just depends on the amount of development happening in Mr. Addison's world and what we're collecting on those impact fees. Half-cent sales tax is averaging between 16, 17, 18 million. It varies. Our collections are always behind. We use that for those restricted referendum projects. Fair share mitigation is about $804,000. Again, I don't know if you've priced anything for facilities, plant construction, but $804,000 sounds like a lot, but it doesn't build the schools that we need for fair share mitigation. Let me take one step backwards if I can. Okay. The safety and security grants receive about $500,000. Now, I hear this a lot also in the community. We have all these grants. We get minimal grants. When you take $500,000 and you start dividing $500,000 by 50 schools, 50 sites, in fact, 43 schools and other ancillary sites. We talk about those types of grants. It really doesn't go very far. And we have other revenue that we'd have to take into consideration for growth strategies in the future. So when we take a look at that was, you saw the revenue. That's the revenue streams that we project. When you take a look at that and you look at the debt service, some of the debt service issues that that Dr. Legutko spoke of, as soon as we get our revenue figures for the year, we immediately start deducting the capital outlay expenditures. And you can see right off the top, we have the repayment of all the COPS. That's the debt service. That's the mortgages that we have on schools that we purchased some years ago. The good news about debt service is Dr. Legutko and I are going to get them paid off here in the next couple of years because we're going to be in a position after coming off of 2 big projects, the board's going to be in a position to have to look at how do we leverage debt to meet the demand of growth. We built the last 2 schools debt-free. Very, very few districts can ever say that. But the growth has caught us at such a rate now, we don't have 10 years to recover in impact fees and to collect to get the next one. So we're going to have to start leveraging, we're going to have to start looking at revenue strategies, and you will certainly be involved in that process. District-wide equipment, we contribute $500,000 to that. Property and casualty insurance, we pay, that comes out of local capital, the district capital outlay. Maintenance department salaries that are eligible for reclass that work on our facilities, that comes out of the capital. District-wide technology, Ms. Ellis mentioned. If you recall, we used to get $1.7 million a year from the Board of County Commissioners every year, and it was kind of earmarked for technology. When we got our half-cent sales tax, that went away. We used the half-cent sales tax dollars to support Ethan and his team with technology, and it's become very apparent that we have to start addressing equity issues with technology. And so our IS services under Mr. Karen and operations under, we are actually kind of teaming up to see what we can do to start looking at an equity plan to make sure that all schools start receiving the same opportunities to have the technology that like our newer schools have. So we're starting a plan, and that's exciting because that equity matters. Transportation we talked about, and then the charter the charter distributions by proration goes. So you take a look at the revenue. When you take a look at that, and you look at $20 million right off the bat comes off that revenue, it kind of limits how much we can project for projects throughout the year. So then we develop the EFP. It's a planned list of projects, just so you know, for 23, 24 through 28. It is a 5-year plan. And look at me when I tell you this. It's a 5-year plan. But honestly, we work on executing 1 year at a time because things can happen, things can fail, and we have to be prepared for that. We submit with the state our 5-year plan. We try to roll those out-year projects up. We try to do that first when we look at the EFP process and how we work with principals and facilities maintenance technology. This year we have 85 planned projects. We had 20 projects roll over from last year. As much as Dr. Legutko would like it, construction doesn't stop and start July 1 to June 30, where we could close down. It'd be great if it did, but it doesn't. Those projects carry over. And so we have about 20 projects rolling in. When we come to you in September, I'll be able to update you on the carryover projects that have completed at that time. So how do projects, you might get this question. I saw that this was on the EFP, a certain school, certain project was on the educational facilities plan. Why do projects get bumped into the out years? We have, they're always unplanned. We've done a great job with HVAC and repair and renovation. That's awesome. We've done a great job with that, but HVAC repair is priority. HVAC control replacements priority. We have lightning strikes all the time to our controls, and we have fire alarm, that affects fire alarm and safety. So there's always unplanned emergencies, and please pray that we do not get impacted by any tropical storms and hurricanes. Every time that happens, when we have flood or a lot of large stormwater events, we have erosion issues and storm drain failures. Those types of projects will absolutely cause us to take a look at what we would stop, time out. We got to go get the emergency fixed. So that's, I provide that to you because you get those questions. You'll get those questions that I thought something was going to happen. So let's look at what projects are planned. If you take a look at the types of project, you have them in the EFP by school. You can take a look at them. But this is just a little summary. So we're tentatively attacking HVAC 14. You'll see HVAC, roof, plumbing, which is restrooms. You'll see safety, a lot of safety security camera upgrades, a lot of emergency communication upgrades at our schools that are going to be phased in over the next 3 years. So when you take a look at all these projects, that's what's planned. And if I have my way, we execute them as we said we do without fail. It all depends on price and what happens. So when we take a look at some of the things that have taken place, it's always great to see last year's work come to fruition. And when you take a look at the Orange Park High School Stadium that we had in time for graduation, it's kind of hard to see. But you can see that the new stadium is in place, and it was needed for a long time. Also, Middleburg High School, just as an example, it's a roof. It's not that people think, gosh, it's not something you really see. But it's 6 acres of roof, and just that one project, just that one project was $3.2 million just for the roof. So when you think about having a $60, $70 million revenue stream, of which $20 million is in debt service right off the bat, that leaves you with 40. So 40, 50 million without an additional revenue stream, it leaves you with 40, 50 million. And then you have to divide that by the projects that you're planning in your EFP by 43, by 50. It doesn't go very far. People think we have all this money. We should take a look at the year in review, some of the awesome projects that are a little more visible. We were able to update our playgrounds, a lot of covered play areas last year. Actually got completed. Clay High School's restrooms were redone. You can see the before and after. It's the little things, these things are, you think, oh gosh, it's not that expensive. But anytime we go into these old buildings and we make changes, code changes, we have to bring everything up to code, things change. And of course, Keystone Heights Elementary, the cafeteria, that's you can kind of see the size of that cafeteria. Trust me, everybody wants one. If you haven't seen the inside of it, I know that we're working on trying to get that. We're working on a time where everybody can come and walk through that, but take a look at the inside of that cafeteria as they get prepared. And we're ahead of schedule on that project. That's a $21 million project. And that's not just a cafeteria. This cafeteria, we converted the old media center to 6 new classrooms. The old cafeteria will be a new media center. That should happen, and we should be done with that in December. But the new classroom wing on the old media center, and this will be ready to go for kids coming back ahead of schedule. So proud of that project. And of course, the big project was Spring Park Elementary School. Was out there yesterday. Outstanding work. I teased Mr. Kramer. He had it easy compared to Miss Ellis when she bought and built Discovery Oaks. Dave had a year and a half plus a year of GMP for steel, which was a smart move on y'all's part to approve the steel package 2 years ago. There's no way this would have been ready if we wouldn't have broken that GMP up. And sometimes when the superintendent comes to you with recommendations, there's a reason for those. And by doing that early, we're opening on time. But Dave had it easy. He had a little more time and a little more cooperation from, Mother Nature. Miss Ellis, on the other hand, had about 12, 13 months. She had 2 tropical storms and a hurricane come through. So we were happy to get that done. But that between just those last 2 projects alone, you're talking about $60 million. And before I take questions, I want to say something. I was at the facilities conference a couple weeks ago, the state conference. All the facilities and planner people were there. And I kept hearing this comment, and I finally had to, be Mike and raise my hand and couldn't be quiet anymore. And then I called and self-reported to Mr. Broski and Miss Ellis what I did at the state level. But they kept saying, they kept talking about COVID being over. COVID being, the pandemic is over. Thank goodness COVID's over. All the ESSER funding, 1, 2, and ARP, all that's going to be ending. And I'm like, time out. If you're looking for legislative priorities, if you're looking for something to talk to with your legislature, I want you to do this. It can be argued, other than the loss of life that COVID brought about and affected some of us, we lost the secretary. But other than the loss of life, the single biggest impact of the pandemic is probably cost of construction, supply and demand, material, labor. When you take a look at what happened between Spring Park at 41, Discovery Oaks at 26 million in a 3.5-year period, cost of construction has doubled, more than doubled. And they kept saying, this COVID pandemic, it's over. The COVID's, and thankfully it's over. And I raised my hand and said, no. It's not over for us. It's never ended. Yes, people probably drop the mask, the PPE, the lotions, the this. All that stuff that they spend a lot of money on. We have enough of that for the next couple pandemics. Not one additional capital revenue dollar was dedicated through the state to increase capital revenue for any of the 67 counties. It's unbelievable. And so when I bring that up, I say, why does that matter? It's costing twice as much to do half of what we used to do. And then I'll hear in the community, you may hear in the community, yeah, but you have Ed, they have Ed First, they have that half-cent sales tax. They're getting $19 million a year. And we were so blessed to go out and the community support us with the half-cent sales tax. And then in 2020, COVID hit. So we've been able to leverage half-cent sales tax, but when things cost twice as much, and yes, we got that revenue, but we're about at the same revenue position we were prior to COVID and prior to having Ed First. So cost twice as much to do half. So when you talk about legislative priorities as a board, Ms. Gilhausen, I would love to see a board step up with some other 67 counties and say, we have to do something about capital, about increases, or at least look at high growth markets where we're experiencing high growth and concerned about debt service. You saw 1/3 of my budget goes to debt service that's already existing. We're going to be forced with classroom additions over time to have conversations about leverage and debt. When we leverage debt, that comes out of capital outlay right off the top. The more that we have to leverage up front to get this growth issue under control, it's the less that we will have available to support 40 schools. That's a real issue. That's what stresses me out about when I see the growth and when we see these hot pockets. This is why we have to be very strategic and flexible with our school projections and where we're going in the future. It can change on a dime. We've already changed the school projections before in the past. We're going to have to do it again. We're going to have to go leverage the money where we can get the biggest impact for growth. And I want to thank the board for the support that you continually give us in facilities, planning, and construction, and especially in the planning department. We have a significant challenge in the next 5 years together, attacking the growth and trying to figure out how we can do this without choking the revenue streams that are going to be available to support the other 40 schools. So with that said, that concludes any questions regarding the educational facilities plan, the process. There could be some changes, and those changes we'll tag team that with Dr. Legutko when she does the final in September. If you don't have anything, that's good. Yes, ma'am.
Ms. Hanson, if you'll speak into your microphone, sorry.
The 4.2 million, is that separate from the rest of the?
Well, there's something that a lot of districts have to do. When when you look at the salaries, I'm trying to pull it up for you. When you take a look at I'll get there, 1 second. Right. I don't know, I'm not doing it. Who's doing it? Go back. Whoever's doing that, somebody's doing it for me. Okay, right there. So when you take a look at maintenance, districts are being forced. It's legally reclassing capital expenditures. Like for example, that when you can reclass capital dollars for salaries to support the operations of the school. A lot of times in the past, some of these salaries used to be paid for out of general fund and others, but the legislature does allow for you to legally reclass eligible expenses that are directly attached to the operations or the facility construction planning where they're touching facilities. So what used to be paid for out of another fund source can be reclassed out of capital dollars. And that's true for the maintenance department. That's true for, you'll see project managers, salary, those that are directly executing projects, those can be reclassed. Same with some of the property casualty, the insurance, the district-wide equipment, things that are eligible for reclass can be reclassed. By doing that, it helps the general fund. It helps take pressure off the general fund, and the general fund is as she explained, is the fund that directly supports instruction for our students and staff. There has to be a good balance, and we're lucky. Some districts have to reclass a whole lot more, but we have to really look at reclass dollars. Reclass dollars in the future, as we have to look at debt, to leverage debt for strategies for growth, we're going to have to really look at reclass as well, and we will work on that. So if I didn't answer, it's 4 point. Those salaries are legally reclassed because they touch our facilities and they're working.
No, it's included in table 3.1.1. Yes, it's included in there.
Right.
Yeah, we just pulled it out on that one slide to just talk about it, but it's included in that slide.
Yeah, I should have used that as an example. I think I skipped over that. But that 4.2 million is like just one example of we're reclassing salaries that are eligible, and we have to do that. Every district's in the position to have to do that right now. So that's what we're doing.
All right, thank you, Dr. Kent. All right, so our next item is to approve the 2023-2024 to 2027-2028 Educational Facilities Plan. Do I have a motion?
I move approval.
I have a motion from Ms. Bola. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Second from Ms. Clark. Any discussion? All in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say no. Motion carries 5-0. All right. Seeing as we are not joined by any members of the public, we have no public comment this evening. Mr. Superintendent.
Just excited to have our folks back tomorrow. First day for students is the 10th.
All right. Bringing it back to the board, are there any comments? Not tonight. Okay.
Not tonight.
Anything from the attorney? All right. With that, this meeting is adjourned.